Every time I stub my toe, I'm sure you can imagine exactly what I say. It's not a conscious decision, just reflex. Many things that humans do aren't planned or thought out like my aforementioned expletive. All those things that come natural to us without any formal education make up human nature, which is part of what I want to discuss today. It came after stubbing my toe for the millionth time that I started to realize just how much of what we do is simply repeating the code written by evolution. On a seemingly unrelated note, I am a part of a society that so often produces dystopian stories. From War of the Worlds to 1984 to The Giver to The Hunger Games, I and my society know what a dystopia looks like. But what most people can't picture is a utopia. So what is that, and how does it connect with human nature? First, we've got to tackle the philosophical elephant in the room here, Utopia. Honestly, this could go so many different ways depending on who you ask, so I'll try to give you the unbiased meat of the thing. A utopia is, according to the smart fellows at Merriam-Webster, a place of ideal perfection, especially in laws, government, and social conditions, so everything's pretty good, honestly. Imagine a society without poverty, homelessness, starvation, or war. For a lot of people, utopia sure sounds amazing, and writers and philosophers weren't slow in throwing in their 2 cents on the subject. The Greek philosopher Plato's book Republic, written around 380 BC, is commonly cited as the oldest of these 2 cents, where he argued for a society with a strict class system named after metals from iron up to golden. These golden citizens would be the philosopher kings, who would distribute fairly and end most of life's inequalities. There was also a bit about sending mercenaries off to war to weed out the warlike ones and how it's super authoritarian and controlling, but it was generally a pretty good first draft of an idyllic society. A little over a millennia later, in 1516, an Englishman named Thomas More contributed to the Utopia tip jar with his own humble book of a republic's best state and of the new island Utopia, which envisioned a welfare state off the coast of South America with no concept of private property or privacy. Also, free hospitals, systematic slavery, and a strong dislike of atheists. While he was certainly tied down by the social beliefs of his time and place, More was getting warmer to our current idea of a utopia. In the years between us and the 16th century, a plethora of thinkers and idealists have filled that jar with more utopias than you can count, with Marxist, libertarian, feminist, nudist, Pastafarian, and most likely a steampunk enthusiast concept of utopia, but what is the reality of those messy and overly optimistic fantasies? In Joshua Green's book, Moral Tribes, he discusses how people are wired to be tribal creatures, highlighting how we naturally divide into small groups, and the larger the society is, the more fractured and uncoordinated it is. It's natural that we divide the world into us and them and push outsiders away out of fear of exploitment. While there are individuals who will welcome strangers like family, there's no society where that is the standard. This guarded behavior is known as parochial altruism or tribalism. Humans evolved to be cooperative out of necessity. One human isn't all that tough against a bear, but with 5 humans it's a different story. However, it's not all good. There's a certain moral situation I'm reminded of, called the tragedy of the commons. So there's this village that has a large field where all the herders let their sheep graze. Of course, with more sheep you get a larger profit when you sell the wool at market, and so some opportunistic herders start increasing the size of their flock. Unfortunately, that field can only hold so many sheep before it becomes an overgrazed patch of dirt. Despite most herders cooperating for everyone's benefit, a couple individuals have destroyed that with their selfishness. Many parts of human nature are defenses against this uncooperative behavior. We care about our reputation, and we lose reputation when we engage in unacceptable behaviors, i.e. selfishly enlarging your flock for personal profit. We also gossip, which means that one can't hide from the group's opinions. To add on to that, most people are naturally judgmental and will change their stance on someone if they hear negative things about them. This keeps people in line and keeps society together by putting the society at large above the individual. This is called altruistic punishment. It's also what putting criminals in prison is. Plato would approve of this society, but is it a utopia? I don't know. While society molds people to act and think differently, there is no way to completely remove individualistic or selfish people. Most people hold tightly onto the idea of privacy and personal property and are willing to fight for that right. Is taking that by force part of a utopia? So much of a perfect system requires that we'd have to give up our humanity and become robots. And is that a utopia? Even discounting all of that, those perfect societies that More and Plato propose would be very difficult to maintain. There are a lot of reasons why a utopia will never be real, from our tribal nature to our innate desire for greed and individualism to how some people like mayonnaise. But the biggest reason is that we're always changing. Every second, every experience we're alive, humans in society will change and grow, and that's beautiful. And that's exactly what a utopia lacks. Humans are unique in our drive towards progress, but when everything is perfect, what progress is there? But maybe I'm being too cynical. While I could spend hours tearing holes in dead philosophers' ideas of utopia, I think I'm missing the point. Just because their centuries-old plan has flaws doesn't subtract from their goal to make an ideal society. And just like all those other human traits I've mentioned before, dreaming of something better is a human trait too. People most often dream of an ideal society when their own society's flaws become front and center. We dream and we want a better future for us and our descendants, and that's the real moral of this. I think that a utopia is hope, the rawest piece of it that we have. The Irish poet Oscar Wilde once wrote, "A map of the world that does not include utopia is not worth even glancing at, for it leaves out the one country at which humanity is always landing, and when humanity lands there, it looks out, and seeing a better country, set sail." Progress is the realization of utopias. In the end, what we defined as a utopia doesn't matter. What matters is that we're willing to chase that shred of hope to the ends of the earth and make our own little personal utopia. And be happy. Have a good night.